Good morning, folks. Welcome to the Dr. Kent Show. I am Dr. John Taylor Kent. I'm what's left of him after all these years. Yeah, I had some setbacks. But I'm going to give you what may be my last show, and you might not even get to see this. I might have to go over to a new channel, a new service completely. I'm going to avoid the topic I guess I slipped into before that one of my shows was taken down over. It was the FBI is NFG, and that was taken down, and I was served notice, and I want to say Facebook because they ban me so often, but it's YouTube. All Big Tech is owned by the same people, by the way. Same people that do the international banking, the same people that form up your wars and make some bad stuff happen. It's all the same group of people, folks. The story is in the Bible. Cain slew his brother Abel. We're dealing with the offspring of Cain, and we are the offspring of not Abel. He was murdered. We're the offspring of his brother Seth, who replaced him, basically. I only sell one product, and that is the latest and greatest Bible in the English language in the world. It is called the proper name version of the King James Bible. So if you are going to harass me over only the King James Bible is the right Bible, this is it. It is in modern English. It has been licensed properly because I know you're going to say, well, the King James Bible's not copyrighted. Well, that's only true in the United States of America. The rest of the world, it is copyrighted. And it took 5 years of negotiating with the Crown to be able to get permission, the Crown being the attorneys, to get permission to do this. One of the impediments was they insisted upon using the words, the old archaic words, thee and thou, and that's not what this is about. It is a far more accurate translation than the 1611 translation. My link is down below. You want to support me? Buy my Bible. It's cheap. I mean, it's dirt cheap. I hate calling the Bible dirt and dirt cheap, but it is cheap. The competitors would charge you at least double, probably more than that actually, for the same Bible, same format, well, I don't want to say the same service, but a disservice because they are in error. There are errors in them, pretty bad ones. This Bible puts in the proper name of Yahweh, Creator, Father, that Ptolemy II took out of the Bible when he produced the Septuagint in approximately 275 BC. We don't know if Ptolemy II was a good guy or a bad guy. He produced the Septuagint, the Greek version, because most of the Israelites had left. They had been rounded up and taken to Assyria, where they stayed for approximately 70 years. And then once they broke loose, or fought their way loose actually, and were allowed to go free after conquering the Babylonian Empire, as a matter of fact, joining up with the Medes to do that, they bolted across the Caucasus Mountains, hence we are called Caucasians, and into Europe and into the rest of the world, into lands that were not inhabited. Also, amnesia was part of their sentence. They would forget who they were, and they would be called by their father's name, who was, Isaac. So they were called Saxons. There's more to the group, more to the tribes than just that. So when you hear people talk about tribes, sometimes it'll be derogatory, other times it actually is positive. The 10 tribes of the lost house of Israel are not lost at all to Creator Father God. He gave us the manual written by other Israelites that tells us about our future, tells us what we've lived through already and what we're about to live through. Now, to get on to my task of maybe slitting my own throat today, because I have to go public with this. I do believe that this is protected under First Amendment free speech rights. I'm not going to, I'm just going to try to tell you my experience. I'm not going to go criticizing the medical profession as a whole, although I will say that as a whole, they have got egg on their face from this thing. It's really pretty bad. And the Democrats and the liberals also have egg on their face for this, as well as a lot of Republicans. Our Constitution has been challenged in a way which I hope we can take this pile of shit they gave us and turn it into something good and nutritious for us, so we can turn it into a blessing. They cursed us, but we have to bless back. Above all, we have to bless ourselves by knowing what the truth is. So this is my testimony as to my experience, my personal experience, with this COVID-19. My early experience was my father went into the hospital at the beginning of everything back in November a few years ago, and we lost him. He was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and we were not allowed to visit him in the hospital. And the nurses damn near cried to me on the phone long distance, telling me that they had to wear these suits, these isolation suits, and they didn't like it because it isolated them from their patients. And I can just imagine what it must have been like for my dad in bed with these people with these big, puffy isolation suits with hoods and masks and all kinds of stuff that kind of depersonalized things. My dad suffered from low oxygen, and he was not suffering, actually. He had low oxygen, and it kind of protected him. He was not in his right mind. One time, he would kind of come and go. And I realized as I was talking to him on the phone that he was good for about 2 minutes, and then he got tired. It's because he ran out of oxygen. So an oxygen-deprived brain doesn't exactly do very well. And one time I called up, and he was talking to me like I was his father. And he was happy. And he was asking me it was a Sunday. He knew what day it was. He asked me what I was going to do. And he reminded me that I went to the horse races on Sunday. I didn't know my grandfather that well, but he liked to go to these, it's kind of an odd type of a race where they had a cart behind the horse. I don't remember what that stuff was called, but the guys were in a cart behind the horse, and they would race those. And it was like, kind of like sports cars, I guess, and horses. I'll have to see if I can remember what that kind of horse racing was called. But he loved to go to that. And he loved horses. My dad loved horses as well. And he reminded me, I'm not going to go to the horse race. He really thought that I was his father talking to him. My dad was able to reach 91 years of age. It was pretty good. And at the end, my brother and I were checking because we wanted to know if they diagnosed him with COVID-19, thereby taking advantage of the government payoffs for that. The government paid off everything on COVID-19, and that's why it's been supported so well, is because the hospitals get big bucks for it. They don't even have to hardly give a service in comparison. I mean, you administer a COVID-19 test, and you get paid a lot of extra money. You give somebody a COVID diagnosis, and you get reimbursed for that because, the government had to support you in this pandemic. You put somebody on a ventilator and you got even paid even more money. That's what I've been told, and I'm going to go with that. I'm going to take that as a truth. But what I'm not going to take as a truth is that there was even such a thing as COVID-19, the virus. Now, why am I knocking the virus? Well, I had to go through Canada a couple of times in order to take care of business. And as the Canadians, at the time, no vaccinations were available. or they were just starting to become available. And the Canadians didn't give a damn if you had the vaccination or not. Their requirement was you had to have a negative PCR test, and it had to be within 24 hours. And I had taken the first PCR test. They shoved that cotton swab up my nose. It hurt. I did not like it. I didn't appreciate that. I don't think it was necessary. Come back negative. Well, somehow or other, they wanted a second PCR test within 24 hours of approaching the border. So I went and I got another PCR test and got the printout and showed up at the border, and they allowed me to pass through. And they handed me 2 PCR test kits, and I had to take one of them on the way in again, and then I had to take another one so many hours into the country. And the problem with it was that they didn't have any place away from the border. My hearing aid just went out. Can I get that? Yeah, there it goes back. I don't know if you're going to pick me up without the hearing aids working on the Bluetooth. I'm pretty sure I'm wired up completely. Anyway, I was required to drop this off with the percolator. I guess the percolator was their system by which they sent packages up there, like UPS or FedEx in the States. Anyhow, turns out that the percolator was only down close to the border, and I was headed up fast. I was driving pretty steadily, and I tried to find the percolator, and I couldn't find it. And as I got further into the country, they told me the percolator's not up in the upper part of the country where I was. So I held on to the kit. I didn't know where to drop it off at, and I was isolating. I was in my motorhome. I wasn't doing anything but getting fuel, and even then it was minimal contact. We weren't even allowed to go into restaurants. Restaurants were closed up and all that. And I hit a damn snowstorm that was just horrible. Anyway, leaving Canada, I handed them the test kit. And the Canadian authorities didn't know what to do with it. I told them, well, I didn't know what to do with it either. I had taken it, and I was submitting it to them. And the woman there was, she threw it away. I mean, that's what they said they were going to do. They didn't know what to do with it either. I didn't know what to do with it. And I had to come back through and went through that again. So I took the PCR test many times. I do not think the PCR test was designed to test COVID. I don't think it's a valid test for any virus at all. I think it's a valid test for how much waste material that your body has got in it, how much broken cellular material your body's trying to get rid of. I mean, that's the best I can tell what it is. The best I can tell about viruses is they really were called exoderms. But the bad guys who run the world today, who own it and run it, decided to take that knowledge away from us in about 1897 and came up with the term virus. So that's what I know. Now, if you know something better or something different, please clarify. Please correct me if necessary in the comments. Talked with my brother. To the best of our knowledge, Dad was never diagnosed with COVID. He died from a combination of sepsis and pneumonia, lack of oxygen. His lungs were not as strong. My brother and he discussed this at length. My dad was a disabled vet from Vietnam. Next to his barracks, they stored Agent Orange. That was what he thought impacted him. However, I didn't know this until after he passed, but he had actually, I knew he was in the Navy, and I knew he worked on the USS Boxer. One of the Boxers, there's been several named the USS Boxer. So he was on the old aircraft carrier, and I know he was stationed in San Francisco. And I know that he had to, I didn't find this out till later, that he had cleaned the ships that came back from the nuclear tests. And you can bet they didn't give those swabbies any respirators, any protective gear, because they were just swabbies. So they had to get up there with mops and brooms and clean this radioactive dust off the ships that came back. And we think that might have weakened his lungs as well. So it was definitely his military service that impeded his ability to get enough oxygen, and whereby he ended up dying from a combination of sepsis and pneumonia. Who knows, maybe in the records it's buried somewhere and it shows up so that the hospital could get reimbursed. But it was a military hospital, so maybe they didn't push for that. Maybe they weren't getting reimbursed like private hospitals, public hospitals. I just don't know. What I do know is this. I got sick a little bit more than a year ago. And so this is my personal testimony and experience. This is not going to be, I don't think it's going to be false information, bad information. I mean, and I'm not knocking any particular treatment or anything that's out there. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to mention the alternative treatment that I took, because it didn't help me very much. I got the 2 alternative treatments, but I won't mention those because maybe that'll get me striking. I don't want to strike on this. I want to get this out there. Good girl. Come on up here. Oh, yeah. I only call her up so you all can see her. Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we're working on being able to sleep together. She got through most of the night, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, she's got to kiss me and kiss me and won't leave me alone. I don't know. It wasn't a good way to wake up, so I put her back in a kennel. Off. Off. Good girl. Down. Get your bone. Get your bone. Where's your bone? Get your bone. Good girl. Down. She can lay down and chew on that bone. She found that bone when we were out and about, and she's grown quite a bit, but the bone, she could barely carry it back home when she found it. She was so proud of that thing when she found it and carried it home. It's like the hip bone off a cow, from what I can tell. A cut section. Anyway, I got sick, and I was sick for almost a week. Everything I did, it wasn't getting better. I was having trouble breathing, and that was my number one symptom and number one problem. And this is just my experience, so it's not I'm not trying to give you some bad information. I'm just trying to give you my experience. And I don't want to get struck and off this channel, but if that's what's going to happen, then that's what's going to happen, and I'll move on to another format, another place. And it'll be a new year for me. So here we are. I did not do a show yesterday. I did Awakening Israel. And the day before that, I did a Dr. John Taylor Kent channel uploads, 2 of those, part 1 and part 2. And I didn't do an Awakening Israel show. So today, this may be all I do. But this is important for you. I couldn't breathe very well. My diaphragm was getting locked up. I mean, my diaphragm was just not functioning. It was getting paralyzed. And it was episodic. And I tolerated it for close to a week. And it kept getting worse. So what I ended up doing was sitting up in bed quickly to get my diaphragm moving again so I could breathe. And then it got worse than that. It got to the point where I was jumping up in bed to get my diaphragm moving again. It would lock up on me tighter. And then it got to the point where not only did I have to jump up in bed, I had to jump down on the floor and hit the floor as hard as I could to jolt and restart my diaphragm. That's when I decided to go into urgent care. Urgent care wouldn't even see me, really. They sent me right to the emergency room. I was right near the Chandler Hospital, so I went there into the emergency room, and they tested me with the PCR test, and they didn't really admit me. They kept me in the waiting area, and then eventually they took me out to the tent outside. They were treating COVID in a heated tent outside. And so I ended up, imagine that. You've got something that's like a cold in some ways, and so you want to stay warm, and they put you outside. And so here I am, and they were heating up blankets and bringing them outside to put them on us. And boy, that sure felt good, because it was really pretty brisk out there. I mean, breath was condensating, it was, you could see the clouds as you were breathing in front of you. It was pretty bad. And I guess that's where they were putting all of us who were testing positive, because I tested positive. And it was a young physician, and I almost remember his name. He wasn't very old at all. He probably was about 30, maybe younger than that. And, I told him that I didn't, I didn't take the unapproved treatment, okay? You all know what that is, and that'll get me in trouble here, so I won't say what it was. I didn't take it because it wasn't approved. And this young physician told me that there was a treatment for what I had. But I probably wouldn't want it because it wasn't approved. And he told me it was monoclonal antibodies. Now, I wish they had told me that it was an approved medical treatment and what it was. Because what are monoclonal antibodies? It's anti-snake venom. And so had I known that this is the treatment, I would have been able to make a better decision. He didn't inform me of that. He just said it wasn't approved, it was experimental. Well, just like everything else isn't approved, it's experimental. Anyway, I didn't take it, and I was weak for 6 months afterwards. I mean, I was very, very weak. It was like I had no strength. Picking up things was difficult for me. Things that I was used to handling. My little bullpup rifle, it was too heavy for me. I mean, that thing's small and lightweight, but I didn't have any strength. And I stayed that way until about April. So for about 6 months, I was weakened. So I'm going to tell you right now that this, to me, my experience of paralysis of my diaphragm, to me was a symptom of being poisoned, snake poison, or maybe shellfish, maybe some other poison that's related to that. And then the treatment would have been anti-snake venom. My God, they only had that window open to do monoclonal antibodies for about 6 weeks, and then it was taken away. You couldn't get it. So a few months afterwards, when I was still weak, I wanted it, but I couldn't get it then. They wouldn't give it. And the other thing is that I do know this, that anti-snake venom is extremely expensive. I mean, if you get snake bitten and you have to go to the emergency room, you can expect a bill of $110,000, $140,000, to give you that. So I know that. But my experience is that it was a paralytic, a neurotoxin that I had been exposed to. That's my best guess. And I'm going to hold to that. Now, I did hear of a physician, a chiropractic physician, I should specify, who went public with what his impressions were. And I haven't heard anything of that lately, so I'm not going to mention that because it seems like that's not even talked about anymore. Now, is that not talked about because it was bad information? Perhaps, so I'm not going to even talk about that any further, okay? Or is it been censored? Is it continuing to be censored? I don't know. It could be that. So I object to the censorship for the following reason. As a scientist, we are always debating things. We are always challenging the conclusions that others have reached. We always replicate the experiments. We duplicate the experiments to test them when we have something of significance. That's the way it is. I made my data available when I did my experiment. It was the raw data. And as a matter of fact, my chair told me, you'll publish the raw data because somebody might learn something from that. And so we aren't even able to discuss this stuff, much less, challenge it, duplicate it, or experiment, do something with a slight twist to it to see if we get different results. So we aren't allowed to learn anything more. And that's my biggest complaint with this censorship. And as a matter of fact, I did not coin this term, but nobody's been using it much. And I think we have to call this the medical, military, industrial complex. And the field of medicine has lost a lot of credibility. And rightfully so, for the way this was mismanaged and mishandled. Now, I don't know what's going on out there much, but I just wanted to give you my experience. My experience to me, and there's one more piece I have to give you here. To the best of my knowledge, no one has ever isolated the COVID-19 virus or even modeled it. Yes, there are artistic pictures, but nobody's out there with anything showing a model, mapping it out, and nobody's out there with a picture of it, isolating it. It's not been isolated. It still has not been identified. And so I have a hard time. I don't believe it. I mean, show me the proof. Where's the evidence? I mean, really, please, if you know that it's been isolated and you can provide a link, I'd really appreciate it because I want to learn. I want to know. But the fact is that by not having freedom of speech, we as a society are stagnated. We cannot grow, we cannot learn, and more importantly, we can't decide for ourselves what the best treatment is. We have been deprived of our constitutional freedoms, of our bodily integrity, of our integrity overall, because we can't talk about this stuff. And I really think that the Democrats and some of the Republicans are at fault for all of this. You allowed the high-tech companies to have monopolies and gave them protections I don't know what you gave them protections under, but there's definitely some code where you've given them protections they should not have. And so we can't take legal action to secure our First Amendment rights or our other rights from them. They get to dictate everything. And then on top of that, we find out that the FBI is in there telling the dictators, private companies, what to dictate. I think we need to shut down vast parts of this federal government. And I think we need to take away the protections from those and the monopolies. I think we need to go as far as to bust them up. I think we should go back to breaking them up. They are the Antitrust Act, Sherman Antitrust Act, I think maybe needs to be brought into play. There are no protections for us. We aren't even able to talk freely. So my experience is it was a neurotoxin. And to this day, I still believe that. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I also do not believe it's been identified. And of course, that's what everybody runs around. We argue about this, we argue about that. Can you prove it even exists? I mean, it's something, but is it what you say it is? Is it a virus, an exoderm? I mean, is it a figment of our imaginations? No, there are symptoms there. Well, what is it then? I want to know what it is. And until off. I don't know what she's getting into. Until we can get it identified, how can we even have a conversation? We don't even know what it is. So we're supposed to operate on blind faith? Boy, that really opens up a nice can of worms. Do you have proof of God somebody's going to come up with in there. Well, there's many gods. Mine is Yahweh. Okay, folks, that's all I wanted to tell you, is that my experience is I was exposed to a neurotoxin, a snake venom-like thing that was treatable by that. And anytime we made progress, they've taken away the treatment. They've taken away the progress. Now, who the hell is behind that? My niece gave me a bunch of crap about wearing a face mask in public. And I kind of snapped back at her. I mean, who the hell is she to tell me what to do? I mean, if it was out of love, fine. But it was the spirit of a social justice warrior. I'm better than you are because this is what I insisted you do. I have to do it too. I told her it was an IQ test and you failed. And then furthermore, I told her, and this is a long time ago, this is the takedown of America by the communists. Now, it's actually much bigger than just that. This has been going on since about 6,400 years, since Cain, approximately that, since Cain slew his half-brother Abel. It's all in the Bible, as well as the futures in there too. Read it, and you'll be less likely to be deceived. I've given several Bibles away. People don't read them. Trying to sell them, well, I buy more and give more away than I sell. I can't afford to do that anymore, folks. So if you want to help me out, buy my Bibles and give them to one another. I don't think you're going to find a better investment. You certainly will not find a better investment in terms of being able to save our nation and save yourself. And I do mean that because there is a national judgment, a national salvation, and salvation also is individual. So here I am getting a little bit more religious on you, and I apologize for that. So you and I, right now, are going to suffer the national judgment. And the national judgment is pestilence. That's what is called in the Bible. And in case you're wondering, the evil ones were given license to sift us. Yes, they were given license, and they don't know it. But they work for Yahweh. They're going to find that out. And so, I don't know which side you're on. I think my side is pretty clear. But I don't know which side that you are on. If you want to save America, we need to do it spiritually. Because if once we start fighting among each other, then we will be attacked from the outside. And in case you're wondering where I get that from, it's just common sense. But it also comes from the prophecies of a fellow who passed away in 1926. I don't think he ever came to America. But this is one of the prophecies from the visions that he had in South Africa. So you need to understand that the prophecy is there. My belief goes a little bit further, and let me take you to that a little bit. I believe that this is an electric universe and that your soul is electrical. It's not biomechanical. It's not all the chemistry. It's not this. We give this up. The only thing that exists afterwards is that electrical charge that began when you were conceived, and God put that spark of life into the union of those cells. When those came together, a spark of life was given off. The bigger the spark of life, the more important that soul is to the rest of us. We're going to get a genius, maybe. That's the moment of conception, not when the heartbeat starts. And one thing that Yahweh says in particular is he hates the shedding of innocent life. And so part of the national judgment, and I will give you that, is that we are sentenced and we are forced to maintain and support one illegal alien. I mean, not that they just can come into the country, but we have to pay their way. That's our sentence. We get to rear them and support them through their lives. So since we have deprived one of our own children, innocent children, of their lives. How many murders, abortions have there been committed since Roe versus Wade in 1974? And there were murders committed before that. And I didn't consider it murder when I was younger. I was foolish. Okay? I didn't get this right for a long time. But we've surpassed 50 million of them a long time ago. So right now, I'm guessing there are 400 million in the country, and we're supporting a good fourth or fifth that are here illegally, and they get to live better than we even treat our own people. They get more money and more support than we give the elderly. If that's not war on your own people, I don't know what is. That's what this looks like to me. It's war on our own people. Our own government is doing this. Whew. I believe that if we repent, that we will change our electrical charge, our souls. And I believe that is picked up throughout the entire universe, in particular by the sun. And I believe that Yahweh repented of the destruction of Nineveh because they repented themselves. They put on sackcloth, I guess ashes, and they fasted and they prayed to Yahweh for forgiveness, and they were spared. Jonah didn't like that. He didn't even want to bother with them. He escaped, was out on a ship when all hell broke loose, and he ended up getting tossed overboard. Nineveh was one of the cities that survived the last earth age. Folks, there was something else peculiar about the people in Nineveh. When Jonah complained to Yahweh that, you're going to save them if he prophesied and walked through that city of hundreds of thousands, 100,000, or was it 400,000? It was something like that. And Yahweh told him, in reply, he told his prophet Jonah, he said, basically, there are 100,000 people there who do not know their left hand from their right hand. Guess what, folks? There are probably way over 335 million in this country today who don't know their left from their right. And we are told clearly in the Bible neither to veer to the left, to go to the left, nor to veer to the right. We're told to walk a balanced life. We're also told to walk the narrow path, the narrow road. And we aren't doing that. We're going really wide. We're going really against Yahweh and against nature. And it's being forced upon us by these high-tech companies, by the corporations, which all have interlocking corporate boards, and by all of our keepers and the bankers. They're forcing us to change the language, to adopt other people's points of view and validate the untruth that they banter about. That there's no such thing as male or female. Well, how did you get your life then? I don't think you get life without male and female. It takes both. Which brings me to my pet peeve. When are we going to have men's rights? When are we men going to have our abortion rights? And in our case, since most of us want our children, we want to be consulted. So we have a chance to claim, a chance to save our children and avoid the shedding of innocent blood. Thereby, maybe getting Yahweh to repent of the judgment he's got for us. I would love to see a state change their laws. And their law would be, if a woman wants an abortion, she has to have the consent of the father. If she cannot get the consent of the father, or doesn't want to get the consent of the father, or if the father wants nothing to do with her, because I know that stuff happens, then she should be able to go in a court, walk in by herself, not even need an attorney, and tell the judge what she wants. And then the judge should be able to make that determination to approve it or disprove it. Okay, fine. It's still legal. However, if a man, upon getting notice that he's going to be a father, if a man wants his baby, if he wants his child, then I think the man should be able to go into court as well and tell the judge, Your Honor, I want my child. I'm the father. I want my baby. It's my baby too. It's not just her body. And the judge should be able to award custody of that baby to the father right there on the spot. When that baby is born, young lady, you're going to hand that child over to the father. And that's it. You will no longer have any custody or claim to the child since you wanted an abortion. Now, we can go further than that. We can make it a little bit more fair, make it a little easier for the woman in particular. We can, and make it easier for the father. Paternal testing mandatory on all children. I like that. Women are going to have to be held accountable. They're not going to be able to get away with, what's that called? Baby, oh well. They're not going to be able to get away with the mischief they pulled on men by having children when a man doesn't want children, or by claiming that the guy's the father when he's not, which happens probably 20% of the time, which is significant. It's probably greater than 20% of the time the woman is pointing at the wrong man because she wants to be supported. She wants this guy's wealth. And so 20% of the time she's probably not, she's lying. She's not telling the truth. So we can go a step further for the women. When the woman doesn't want the child, the judge can tell the man, you're going to help with the medical expenses. Split the medical expenses, or even if the man wants, I mean, he could volunteer right up and say, Your Honor, I want my child. I'll cover the bill. What more could you want? I mean, there I've got how it ought to be handled in a proper state where a man has rights. Men don't have rights. It can be argued that only women have the right to vote because nowhere in the Constitution or in the original 13th Amendments, original 12 plus the 13th, which was properly adopted, the original one is the law of the land. Nowhere is voting mentioned. It is mentioned in the 14th Amendment, which is illegal as hell. The South was not represented when that was adopted. Therefore, the 14th and 15th Amendments are null and void. Okay, we're getting back to the 13th Amendment and saving America. Folks, you can save America by liking this video, subscribing to it, passing it on, sharing it, commenting, buying my Bibles, sitting on your butt and reading your Bible, and realize the United States of America is in the book of Genesis and throughout the Bible. And America is clearly in there, and what we have become since we have been taken over from within. We're conquered people. Don't kid yourselves. This is not a constitutional republic anymore. I will end on that note. You all have a good day. I hope my witness is of use to the community. I hope it's of use to the scientific community. I want to see pictures of an isolated virus. I want to see models of an isolated virus. I want to see open debate to make sure that we've got it right. That's what I want to have. That's the missing piece. And as far as treatment goes, monoclonal antibodies are made in a peculiar way. I don't think they need to be as expensive as what it's been, especially since we need so much of it. So maybe we should ramp up reproduction of that? I don't know. What do you think? I mean, that's just my guess. I am stronger now, but I certainly wish I hadn't been weak for 6 months. It wasn't until after April, May practically, before I got strong again. That wasn't that long ago. May Yahweh bless America. May Americans bless Yahweh. May Americans reclaim our republic. May America become good once again, so that Creator Father God Yahweh will repent of the evil He has already put in writing 2,500 years ago in the Bible for us. Yes, it's all in there, folks. I'm not kidding you. You got questions? I got answers. Yahweh bless.